Hi, my name is Lindsay DiCuici, and I'm an associate professor of English at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I'm also the director of our Humanities teaching labs, which are part of a 5-year Mellon-funded initiative called the Inclusion Imperative, and it's run through UMBC's Drescher Center for the Humanities. The Inclusion Imperative program focuses on promoting diversity and inclusive excellence in the humanities. And we also partner with Bowie State, Coppin State, and Howard University to cultivate a regional network of scholars who are committed to expanding community-engaged humanities research and teaching, focused specifically on issues of equity, inclusion, and justice. The Humanities Teaching Labs, or HT Labs as we call them, were envisioned first as a kind of flexible, movable resource, not a fixed physical site. So our labs are hands-on collaborative workshops. And the topics center on engagement with Baltimore communities and experimentation with state-of-the-art digital tools. We typically have 6 labs per year, and we've been fortunate to be able to host innovators across the country for our labs, and also to feature really fabulous work being done at UMBC and in our regional diversity teaching network. In 2018, for example, we were really thrilled to collaborate with a renowned scholar of digital storytelling, Dr. Antonia Liguori of Loughborough University in the UK. She came and did a 2-part lecture and lab. And in the lab portion, attendees of that HT lab learned the key elements of digital storytelling and practiced storyboarding. They edited audiovisual materials and discussed how different modes of storytelling vary in the diverse cultural context in which we work and live. We were also fortunate for that lab to also partner with the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access. And we occasionally do, for our HT labs, partner with other working groups and units on campus. In the case of both the Smithsonian partnership and that with Dr. Liguori, our relationship will then continue with a collaboration on a digital storytelling conference, which ideally will happen in 2021. In the fall, we'll continue with that thread of focusing on digital storytelling, and we have a slate of virtual labs lined up at least through the new year. We are in the fall featuring 2 UMBC faculty members at our lab. They're both professors assistant professors in the Modern Languages, Linguistics, and Intercultural Communications program, Dr. Tanya Lizarazo and Dr. Tanya Munoz. They're going to be sharing their work with a digital storytelling and service learning project titled Intercultural Tales, Learning with Baltimore's Immigrant Communities. This is a project wherein UMBC students who are studying Spanish or global studies collaborate with immigrants in the local community to co-produce digital stories about their experiences. So in this lab, participants will learn about that process, learn how a project like that could come together in their own classrooms. And also the co-leaders will provide tools, templates, practical guides, and resources that we then post into our HT Lab site for public use. So we're trying to also build up a really rich online resource for people looking to do this kind of work. So thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about HT Labs at UMBC. I hope you'll also check out more on our website, inclusionimperative.umbc.edu. And thanks very much.
Hello, my name is Fritz Breithaupt, and I'm the director of the Experimental Humanities Lab at Indiana University. In our lab, we study narratives, and that means the narratives in our mind, the little story clips that guide our daily behavior, from the everyday things all the way to more complex forms of behavior. So we look at narratives in the social media world, but we also look at complex fiction as we encounter it in the high arts of the last centuries. And what we want to know is how that shapes how we live, how we feel, how we make moral decisions, and how we orient ourselves in our world. Another aspect that we study is empathy. And again, narrative empathy, how narratives draw us to other people and what effects that has, including some dark sides. So you asked me, what is a humanities lab? And I would say it's a playground. It's where people come together. And in this case, people who are not used to collaborate, not used to play together. Half of the members of the lab are from the humanities, from various different disciplines. And the other half comes mostly from cognitive science, which again includes other fields too, from informatics to psychology to computational linguistics. There are undergraduates, including freshmen, there are graduate students, and there are some faculty colleagues, about 15 people. And all of us meet once a week, but then we have like 10 weekly group meetings to pursue individual projects. And they can be born out of anyone's mind, including a freshman from in the undergraduate years, which is, I think, very good. You can play with these tools that we have there. We ask big questions, we ask small questions, we use the humanities sensibilities and the empirical methods that are available to us. So to show you how this can look like, I want to show you one example about one study. And here we go. So here, first of all, you see our group, at least some of the members at a retreat that we did last year. So one of the things we look at is telephone games, retelling of stories on a massive scale. And in our case, we have done probably the largest study in the world with close to 20,000 retellings by more than 12,000 people involved. And we want to know what remains the same when you have stories passing through many people, what decays and what gets, where's innovation taking place. So here's a famous image that a researcher close to 100 years ago came to, where he asked people to repaint an owl. And interestingly, what he saw, he observed an effect that at some point the owl became a fluffy animal with ears and then became cat, 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 cat. From then on, it remained stable. So we ask in a similar way, what remains stable in narratives? Here's our statistical model by one of our colleagues. But in our case, we found out it's actually the emotions of the stories, the things that go on that people feel when they read a story situation. They remain stable, everything else changes and drops. So this gives you a sense of one study that we have come to in our collaboration of humanities people with empirical methods. I hope that gives you a sense of what we're doing. If not, please check us out on our website or join us. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Sally Kitch, and I'm a Regents and University Professor of Women and Gender Studies in the School of Social Transformation at Arizona State University. I'm also the director of ASU's Humanities Lab. The Humanities Lab at ASU is an instructional space that invites interactive, exploratory learning characterized by intergenerational, transdisciplinary collaboration. Each lab focuses on a vexing social challenge, such as immigration, sexual violence, health and wellness, homelessness, the pandemic, and urgent environmental hazards, from the impact of the American industrial food system to the burning of the Amazon rainforests. The Humanities Lab is predicated on the recognition that complex social challenges, including COVID-19 and climate change, are never simply technological problems. Rather, their solutions require analyses of cultural and historical contexts, power structures, language, symbols, beliefs, and values. And they benefit from the problem reframing capabilities of the arts and humanities. The lab space is equipped with furniture and technologies that foster teamwork and interactive learning. That learning results in the production of a publicly shared impact action addressing the lab's challenge. Rather than covering course materials or a particular topic, genre, or historical period, labs generate questions and develop potential problem solutions. Each lab devises mechanisms, presentations, stories, other kinds of narratives, poems, podcasts, social media, or video productions, and sometimes many of the above, for sharing learning outcomes beyond the university. Faculty pairs from different fields, one a humanist or artist, and the other from a scientific, technological, or social scientific field, work as a team with graduate and undergraduate students. Each lab session is a workshop in which every reading or resource is approached with problem-specific purposes in mind. Faculty provide the general framework, guiding questions, and core readings, but students also contribute readings, questions, and other resources as the lab proceeds. Many labs interact with community organizations to address practical problems related to their challenge. Students and faculty report that their humanities lab experiences have helped them discover interconnections between problems, acknowledge limitations in their pre-existing assumptions, and recognize and appreciate the importance of collaborating across social and intellectual categories. Labs further help students and faculty recognize the depth of knowledge truly necessary to initiate responsible and effective social change.
I'm Kimberly Marshall. I'm a professor of music at Arizona State University, and I have been honored to be part of the Humanities Lab curriculum. A Humanities Lab is an opportunity for students and faculty to explore issues together and to try to answer questions of relevance to a particular topic, exploring ways to find solutions to problems or to enhance the quality of life. Being a musician, I was very interested in looking at the impact of sound on health and wellness. And so it was very interesting to put together a loose curriculum that provided different readings, scientific studies on deleterious aspects of sound on our hearing, on our well-being, on our emotional states, but also on the types of sound that can be very beneficial, especially natural sounds. And then the students would bring into each of the lab sessions some of their own readings, their own experiments, ideas about different aspects of sound and well-being. And we had the additional challenge of the COVID epidemic and not being able to meet in person for the last half of the course. And this actually proved to be somewhat of an added bonus, I would say, for our explorations together, because we had to find ways of exploring sound and well-being without being in the same room and using different media to create projects. So some of the projects were different meditations, sound meditations that could be done online. One student took us on a nature walk with natural sounds that we could imagine exploring on our own, and gave us ideas for our own sound walks, which of course is one of the best things that we can do during this epidemic to take care of ourselves. One student wrote poetry and read the poetry in such a way that some people might really find solace in the sound of his voice and the words and the images that he was evoking. One of my favorites was some research that one of the students did into the effect of beehives and the sounds of bees on the human psyche and as a tool for relaxation, which is not perhaps immediately evident, but very, very creative. He even found places where you could go lie on beehives and experience the vibrations, and that would have some documented well-being effects on your own body. So many people were kind of amazed at that aspect of his research and the outcomes. And one student wrote a short story about COVID, and it was a fictional story, but it brought up a lot of the issues that many of us are dealing with. And he read it and had special music behind it, sort of to create a certain type of environment. Other students created musical explorations or some just explorations of sound that they thought would be helpful for different types of tension and stress, especially coming during a time when it's hard to hear music live. And I think that the overall effect of the sound lab is, or in our case, it was a sound lab, but of any humanities lab, is a very practical way that we can all work together, identifying questions of import to us all, and then looking for creative solutions or ways to help each other in answering these questions and perhaps improving the quality of life for everyone. So the Humanities Lab is a format I would highly recommend, and I hope that this can inspire some of you to pursue research and collaboration in a similar way.
Hello everyone, my name is Gary Dirks. I'm Senior Director of the Global Futures Laboratory at Arizona State University, and I also direct the Lightworks Initiative, which is an energy-based program also at Arizona State University. And I'm here to say just a few words about a course I co-taught under the Humanities Laboratory titled Energy and Social Justice. One of the core concepts of Humanities Lab is the idea of team teaching, and especially bringing together people with very diverse backgrounds to give the students a somewhat richer experience. Chris and I come from very different backgrounds. My degree is in chemistry, and I spent my first career in the energy sector. Chris, in contrast, is a historian and author, and is a professor in the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies. So what we tried to do with this class was to explore the importance of narrative in both shaping and driving the energy transition. We really focused on the idea of the energy transition. And we explored then narrative forms, the various different ways in which students could construct a narrative and what made a good narrative. And then we also explored various different platforms that might be available for the students to communicate their narratives. And then finally, in a third dimension, we explored complexity, just how difficult and challenging energy transitions can be. We chose as our case study the Navajo Generation Station, a very large coal power generating station located in the northern part of Arizona. And we chose it because of its extraordinary complexity. The history of the plant goes back to the 1960s and involved negotiations between state business and officials, between the federal government, and between environmental groups. It has a complicated history today because, on the one hand, closing the plant eliminated a lot of emissions of carbon dioxide and consumption of water, but it also meant a very large loss of revenue to the Hopi and Navajo Nation, and the loss of many jobs, which impacted both the Native American tribes, but also the city of Page. This meant that there was a complexity and a richness that allowed the students to really get a sense of just how challenging the energy transition really is. In the very early stages of the class, the first few sessions, we focused on conveying a lot of information about the Navajo Generation Station, about the structure of narratives, about the various different platforms that the narratives could take. But as the class progressed, more and more of the work was really focused on directions that the students themselves thought they needed to take. All along, we did short mini assignments so that they could get hands-on experience, so they could work with each other. We emphasized team teaching throughout. All building towards the idea of final projects. Those final projects emphasized two different types of narrative, one for a general audience and one for decision makers. The students were required to work in teams. They were required to produce a narrative both for the general public and for decision makers. It was at this point that the pandemic arrived and ASU did not return for face-to-face classes following spring break. We nevertheless continued on and encouraged the students to complete their final projects, to work together as best they could through virtual contact, both asynchronously and synchronously where they were able to. I would have to say that both Chris and I had some reservations about exactly how this was going to work, but nonetheless we're totally shocked actually at how the students really rose to the challenge, found a form, found a narrative that they could do together asynchronously, and in my opinion produced a really extraordinary outcome.